Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Now, despite Anna Sarwar saying that what's going on in Westminster and Keir Starmer's unpopularity not having an effect on his party in Scotland, that is to say, Scottish Labour, which is actually an independent Labour away from the main Labour Party. It's held as a separate party, controlled separately, financed separately. But of course, they all get tarred with the same brush. And unfortunately for Sarwar, people within the Labour Party in Scotland, Scottish Labour, are very, very unhappy with the Labour Party at Westminster, and so are leaving Scottish Labour. Even though the two are not connected directly, but there is, of course, they are kissing cousins, as it were. And so there is dwindling support for Scottish Labour, and they are going to one of two places. And you could not imagine a more diverse split. Some, of course, are going to Reform, and some are going to the SNP. The SNP is benefiting directly because of Keir Starmer's inability to function as a human being. And when you get these opinion polls that giving the results about really the opinion of the leader of Scottish Labour, Anna Sarwar himself, he's very quick to kind of dismiss it as, a small, unimportant thing. But the fact remains, he himself is becoming increasingly unpopular as a leader, even amongst his own party. And Labour, of course, are very unpopular as a party. It's all sort of amalgamating into one great big sort of globule of lose, really, for the want of a better word. Just a few months ago, 2 months ago even, Anna Sarwar would have loved the opportunity to have an election. He was riding high. He was doing very well. He would have had possibly the largest party at Holyrood. Now, he'd be lucky to come third. How the mighty have fallen. And whilst it seemed completely unthinkable that John Swinney could remain as the leader of the largest party in Holyrood, it seems that that's exactly what's going to happen because of those Labour voters swinging back to the SNP. Polling is basically spun around. It's mixed up. It's reversing. It's done a reverse ferret. Sarwar is still upbeat when he's interviewed and talking about things. Oh yes, we can get this, we can do this, But that's just the face he's showing to the world. I think behind the scenes, he's a very, very worried man because this is going on now. Wait till Reform off what's going to be a massive victory across the councils in May 25. They're then going to go north. They're going to be pushing in Scotland. They'll have that momentum. They are going to pull a lot of votes. Labour could be third, even fourth in some polling. It's going to be bad news. I think we are looking now at the dog days of Anna Sarwar's leadership of Scottish Labour. I think that after the 26th election, he will be, well, let's just say the way that Labour do it. He will resign. He will be resigned, He will be having a visit and will be not ejected from the building, but he will be required to relinquish control, shall we say. Kenny Gibson, who's from the SNP, he's been triumphantly declaring to all and sundry and any who would be bothered to listen to him that the SNP are going to make great strides. And he's saying, and madly because it isn't going to happen, but he's saying that the SNP could even come back with an absolute majority, just like Sturgeon did all those years ago. No, you're not. And the reason is quite simple, of course. Reform. Reform are going to run you ragged. It doesn't help of course, that you've got Labour falling apart on one hand, the Tories being, well, just generally unpopular because of what they've done on the other hand, and the SNP are benefiting from this for now. But they're a party that's dying on their arse anyway. They're a party with increasingly fewer supporters, although recently with the Labour ones it has boosted up a little bit, but generally it's a downward trend. They've got no corporate sponsors. They're not getting the Shorts money from Westminster anymore, and so they are utterly reliant on the tiny bit of membership money and whatever bequests they get. Last year their biggest payment was bequested. And of course, with a election that they've just fought at the general election, with money they'd taken the previous year, this year's accounts, I think, are going to be horrendously bad. And if they don't get much money coming in over the next year and a half, I don't think they can afford to fight a general election in 2026. And, a Holyrood election, in 2026. And so it could be that they lose seats simply because they can't afford to put someone in every seat. We've seen there's been by-elections recently where they haven't stood anyone. I think it was Arran, the Isle of Arran. There was a seat. They didn't stand anyone because they knew they were going to lose. And they didn't want to waste money paying a deposit for someone who was going to lose. This is where they are now. And that's cracking. Now, the poll showed, just to give you some numbers, that Labour has declined to 21%, even lower than the 22% recorded at the Holyrood election. And it's downwards. It's a downward trajectory for Labour. And at the same time, of course, Reform are polling right on their heels. We're 17 months away now, and there is a lot of work to do by all parties. But it's going to be a very, very interesting election. And I make the prediction that I still think the SNP will do well. Whether they have the most seats or not is hard to tell. But I think Reform will, if they don't come first, they'll come second. I think they'll outperform Labour and the Tories. And then they can, if they are the second, then they could go in with Labour or the Tories perhaps, if they've got enough seats, form the majority and run the government and get the SNP out, which of course is what Farage and the SNP have said is their number one goal at the Holyrood election, is regardless of who they work with, get the SNP out. So they could do it. It's a challenge, but it'd be a satisfying victory if they did. Thanks very much.